I've been talking a lot lately about ductless mini splits, getting a lot of attention in the industry. Uh, the the efficiency of these things and versatility of a lot of them is probably the main reason. But I thought I would just go over a few of the basics so you'll kind of understand the difference between this, let's say a heat pump mini split and a typical heat pump, standard heat pump. Um, my 50-year thing came up because in a couple of months I'm going to my 50-year class reunion, and that the day after I graduated, I actually went into the heating and air conditioning business, my father's business. So I will have had 50 years in the trades. And even though I've been in home inspection and I have a school and stuff like that, I think in my heart, I still think of myself as a plumbing and HVAC guy. So that's kind of, where I'm coming from a lot of times when I'm talking to you guys. But I've been out there in the field. I've listened to the realtors. I've listened to the clients and stuff like that. So I understand what you guys are, what you deal with. Um, I found this picture recently. I thought I would pop it up here. That the guy right here, that's my father. And I stumbled across this image. He was actually plumbing the Chesapeake jail here in Hampton Roads. I'm in Virginia Beach. This is in Chesapeake, and realized that that was me down below. I'm like 5 years old there, and so did started me out a little early and kind of got me into the business. And to be honest with you, I was working um, probably when I was 10 or 11 years old. I would go out on calls with him and go, kind of decided whether I was going to go in that business or not. So that's how that came about. Douglas mini splits. When you think about them, you really get around the 70s is when you start remembering some of the discussion. Some of you obviously weren't around in the 70s, but a few of us were. And I remember when these things were coming into play. Most of them came from Europe or Asia, wherever, and really they were an alternative to a window unit. When you actually install them, it didn't have that window unit feel. So people would put them in for things like additions. You put an addition on a house or something like that, you would put these things in. Maybe you just needed some additional cooling. I mean, we've all gone into the finish room over the garage and it's just not able to, the central system's not able to cool the place. So you could put one of these guys in. Um, Most of us know, or most of us remember the first time we ever came across one. It was probably the little unit mounted up on the wall. Well, today we got some variety. We have the wall unit still. We have a floor unit that's still on the floor, kind of like a little radiator. Looks like about the size of a radiator or whatever. And they even have the ceiling models, the cassette models, and things like that. So the versatility is definitely out there, and I'm even hearing of some localities where people are using mini splits to do the entire house, heating and cooling the entire house, because they're able to control individual rooms better. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware, we have multi-generational homes today. In many cases, we'll have, grandma will be living in the other room and she's freezing to death. And, so she wants to, she doesn't want the air conditioner to cool her down anymore. And then of course, mom's in the next room, and mom's in there. Poor thing, she's having hot flashes. So she's got the AC cranked up. And then, the kids are running around or whatever. So there is that versatility. And the other thing that I find interesting or helpful with these things is you get a little more variety on the BTU ratings and all. Generally, if you were going to put an additional standard system in a house, you were going to put a standard heat pump or air conditioner in a house, you'd probably end up with a 1.5 ton system on a space that you probably didn't need a 1.5 ton. But with mini splits, you can get much smaller, and some of our outdoor units now can take care of multiple indoor units, and again, variety of BTU ratings on them. So that's kind of an advantage of it. I have no idea where I got this image from, but it was probably Samsung because it's their equipment. But anyway, this is just showing you got different units throughout the house. I think they mainly show the wall units, but they've also got a ceiling type unit or whatever. So anyway, this is kind of cool. You can get these things kind of hardwired into the system, but a lot of people they use their remote. You know, I'm sure somebody says go get the clicker. Everybody's going to be. They're not sure whether they get the TV clicker or the you know the clicker for the mini split. But anyway, we've got that. That's giving you all kinds of bells and whistles on this thing, and everything is set up. But you can, just keep the clicker nearby, and you can control the system. When you hear about these things, you're going to hear about different types of systems. One, you'll hear them talking about the inverter series. The inverter series has a lot of advantages. I mean, it can save you money on operation. But this little graph here kind of explains a lot of it. On a regular system, I heard someone explain it. Imagine if you turn on the car and the accelerator was pushed to the floor, and all of a sudden, boom, you're going. You're out there. So if it came on, boom, you're on the case of an air conditioner, you're cooling the house down, and then it cuts off. It kind of, if you follow that gray line there, you can see it goes up and down and up and down. Whereas when you're using inverter equipment, what you have there is it's like having the accelerator on the car, and you press it down a little bit and kind of rev it up where you need it, and you can lift it up and you get that smoother line through the house. A lot of times it'll be running at a very low speed. It just doesn't need a lot to keep up, depending on the load, of course, and you can kind of get a more even type feeling in the house, is the comfort level and so forth. So a lot of that has to do with comfort. Noise is another thing that these guys focus a lot on. Indoor units are usually pretty quiet. Even outdoor units, some of your outdoor units, they go different ways to quiet them down. Some will use 2 fans on an outdoor unit, and then they can, run the 2 fans at a lower speed in some cases, and they can quiet it down. But again, that's another area where, they understand what people want, so they try to give it to them. And it's not without a price. I mean, these things are like, twice what a window unit would be, maybe, a little more than that. And then with all the new technology involved in this, it's naturally going to cost more, and you're going to have to go to, people that understand what they're working on and so forth, for the repairs. Compressors, most of us are used to looking at a standard type unit. You look in the top of the unit, and you'll see a compressor in there. On the units we typically see with the heat pumps and air conditioners. On the standard equipment, you'll look in there and you'll see a real tall, usually round compressor. It'll be a scroll type compressor. And on the mini splits, what we're usually looking at is a rotary compressor. And the rotary compressors are real good with extreme temperatures. And on the heat pumps, you can operate these mini splits at a very low temperature. One manufacturer even notes that they're putting out like 60% of the design, output when it's like 16 below zero. It's pretty crazy how they're able to do that. But look at the compressor. The compressors, I've got one here in the school. It's got the accumulator on it. If you look at the little deal that's connected to the side of it, the one I have here is quite a bit smaller. But basically, if you're familiar with the other units, accumulator is going to hopefully help prevent liquid from getting back to that compressor. Now, there are occasions where I've seen a second accumulator in the system, but these basically they come this way with that accumulator attached. So you can kind of look at them, and usually you'll see that right off the bat, and you'll know, well, there's something different about this. I get questioned oftentimes. They say, Kenny, I couldn't find the disconnect to the unit inside. Well, the unit inside gets its power from the outside unit, from the outdoor unit. So here you can see an actual set of terminals and all, and it feeds the indoor unit from here. So you're not going to see a disconnect like you would see on an air handler or something. You're not going to see a disconnect like that inside. The wires, the way the system's set up, and it's not just providing power, it's kind of the communication wires telling it, telling it more or less what to do. The outdoor units are often mounted on brackets, which is kind of cool because you can kind of put them where you want to. Though you'll see some on a pad, and I always look to see if there's a situation where they might blow over. I used to take care of some office buildings, and we had some on the office buildings, and we had a couple of storms go through, and they flipped over. So we had to, try to figure out a way to anchor them down. With the pads, it's a little trickier, but with these brackets and all, you can kind of get them up there. So if it's a heat pump, the water can get away from it on defrost, and you can really anchor them down. The metering devices are a little different. Most of us are familiar with the thermostatic expansion valve. You look in there and you'll see the device with the little remote bulb that goes off of it. And some of them have fixed metering devices and stuff. These actually use an electronic expansion valve, and they're in the outdoor unit. They're actually located in the outdoor unit. And that has a lot to do with why the lines that you guys see on these things, both of the lines are insulated. Not just the one line. So both of the lines are insulated. So, if a do-it-yourselfer would put it in and he wouldn't insulate both lines, that of course needs to be done. I would say the vast majority of our standard equipment out there today is what I call updraft. It sucks in the air from the outside walls, discharges out the top. So that usually will limit to you where you can put things, as far as going under things, because it'll build up heat and so forth. But the mini splits that I'm seeing, and I'm not even sure if there's any other types right now, actually draw in the air through the front and on the sides there, and they usually discharge out the front. So you can actually put cover over these, and in some cases they come as a kit. You can put a cover over it to keep stuff from getting on top of them. We've seen people with the regular units try to build some kind of goofy looking thing to protect it. On here, you can, you shouldn't have a real problem with that. I have had a situation where a couple of the heat pump units were discharging on a sidewalk. And if the sidewalk got wet, the air was so cold coming off of these things in the winter time. Got to be careful. You're liable to develop a little ice out there with these things kind of feeding that cool air to it when it's in that in the heating mode. When the units go into defrost, you don't see this that I know of on any standard equipment. But when these things go into defrost, a lot of these guys have a heater in the outdoor unit in the base pan. So when the unit goes into a defrost type situation, and usually you start getting the frost, slide down. I hear people say ice or whatever, but anyway, if it's typical, it's going to be like frost, maybe a little bit of ice. It'll go to the bottom. Well, on many of these, you have the base pan heater as well, and when that thing kicks on, it'll actually start pouring out. It'll start pouring out the water. It'll get it away from that unit, and that's super important. Even on standard equipment. I feel like one of the things that are overlooked often is the outdoor unit isn't elevated. And on a heat pump, if it's not elevated, some of you guys that I'm talking to now, you see quite a bit of snow. We don't. I'm in Virginia Beach. We saw a little bit of snow last year, and we had to look really quick because it was gone by the end of the day. So we don't get a lot of snow here, but in some areas you do, and they are able to use heat pumps. So if you give it a little room to get rid of that water, it's definitely helpful. I get asked a little bit about emergency heat or some additional heat. Generally, when you're talking about that for a mini split, you would be talking about another system. I've had people say that they were worried if the unit, because you don't have like a strip heater attached to this thing. So if it wasn't doing the job, maybe you'll have an electric baseboard or something like that to help it out. But in the vast majority of the cases, the units themselves will produce the heat that you need, especially most days. You're not going to have a problem with that.